welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a super video. See what I did there? We have 5 delicious soups that we are making. They are so easy to come together. So I hope that you enjoy them, and without further ado, let's make some soup. The first recipe this week I'll share with you guys is a hearty lentil soup. It has so many veggies in it and it is really good, and it comes together in less than 30 minutes. So we are starting with 1 onion, 1 bell pepper, 2 stalks of celery, and 2 carrots. Dice them all up finely. And then we have 4 pieces of thick bacon, and I chop that up. And now over to our pot. I am going to actually just add in the bacon over medium-high heat. You do not need to add any oil or any butter because we're going to render the fat and we're going to use that as our base. So we're going to cook that about 4 minutes, and then we're going to add in all of our veggies. So that would be the onion, bell pepper, celery, and carrots, and then season it up with a little salt and pepper. Once the veggies are nice and soft, about 5 minutes, we are going to add in our seasonings, which is a teaspoon each of garlic powder, onion powder, and Italian seasoning. And I put in a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes just to give it a little kick, totally optional. Now here is our little shortcut ingredient. I am just using 1 15-ounce can of lentils and a 1/2 can of petite diced tomatoes. Now you can use 2 cans of lentils here. If I had a second can, I probably would have used it. However, I only had the 1. So it is up to you to each your own. Now we are going to add in 4 cups of chicken broth and bring that up to a simmer. And I did add in about a 1/4 cup of fresh parsley. It gives it a really good flavor. Always wait till last to put in your fresh herbs. This way they do not turn too dark during the cooking process. Here is what it came out like, and it was so good. And I'm telling you guys, it came together in less than 30 minutes. This is a family favorite. Next up, we are making cheeseburger soup. I know that cheeseburger soup has been around for a while, but let me tell you, it has really made a comeback in these last few years. So I am using 1 onion, 2 stalks of celery, 2 carrots, and 3 russet potatoes. I peeled and diced the potatoes, and I diced up the rest of the veggies. And I am going to be using this processed cheese. I know, it is definitely not the healthiest, but I love this in cheeseburger soup. It is not something that we eat all the time, so it is a real treat. So I only needed 12 ounces. This is a 32-ounce pack, so I just used about a 1/4 of this pack. I just kind of eyeballed it, honestly, and then I just diced it up. Now over to our pot. I am just browning a pound of ground beef over medium-high heat, and I am just going to drain and set it aside after it's done browning. And then I'm going to add into the same pot, not cleaned, I am going to add in a tablespoon of butter, and we're going to cook our veggies in here. So go ahead and add your onions, your carrots, and your celery. This is actually also known as a mirepoix, if you did not know the term. So we are just going to season that up with a little bit of salt and pepper and cook that down for about 5 minutes until the veggies are nice and soft. Once our veggies are softened, we are going to add in our potatoes along with our seasonings, which is a teaspoon each of onion powder, garlic powder, and Italian seasoning. Do you see a theme here? These are my 3 favorite seasonings in pretty much all my soups. And now we are going to add in 4 cups of beef broth, and then we're just going to put the beef right back into the pot, bring that up to a nice simmer. Now here we are actually making what is called a roux, which is pretty much just butter and flour. It's the same amount of each. So I have 3 tablespoons of butter that I'm going to melt, and then I am going to add in 3 tablespoons of flour, and it creates almost like a paste, and this thickens up the soup without leaving any clumps at all. Because if you were to just put straight flour into the soup, you would have clumps all over the place. You just want to make sure that you cook it for about a minute to a minute and a half because you want to get rid of that raw flour taste. Now we're just going to add that into the simmering soup along with our processed cheese, and we're going to have it all melt together. And I am putting in also 1.5 cups of whole milk. You can use half and half here as well, or even heavy cream, and that would give it a lot of extra creaminess. And make sure you're tasting as you go. I did add in a little more salt and pepper. That processed cheese is a little salty, so be sure that you are tasting as you go. After everything is all melted, you will see how thick and beautiful that this soup is looking. I just topped it with some cheddar cheese and some scallions, and I even put a little bacon to kind of make it like a bacon cheeseburger soup. It was amazing, you guys. If you haven't tried cheeseburger soup yet, this recipe is definitely one to try. All right, so this recipe is our shepherd pie soup. I know it is very similar to the cheeseburger soup, but it has an entirely different texture and flavor. So we are taking 1 onion, 3 cloves of garlic, mince that up, dice them up, and peel and dice 4 red potatoes. Now we are just going to boil the potatoes just like you would any kind of mashed potato recipe. Doesn't really matter how you do it. You can salt your water or not, totally up to you, as long as you mash your potatoes. Now over to our soup pot, I am just going to brown 1 pound of ground beef and of course drain it and set aside. Once your ground beef is set aside, we're going to melt in 2 tablespoons of butter, and then we're just going to cook down our onions in this butter for about 5 minutes until they're nice and translucent and soft. Of course, season them with a little bit of salt and pepper. Salt will always help cook your vegetables down and soften them. Now, after they've been cooking for about 5 minutes, you will be adding in your 3 cloves of minced garlic. Give that a really good stir and cook that for about another minute or until the garlic starts to get nice and fragrant. Now we're going to add in a 1/4 cup of flour. Now you're just going to want to cook this for about a minute. You want to make sure that you cook out the flour taste. Raw flour does not taste good, so make sure that you cook that through. And now we are just going to be splashing in slowly our chicken broth. So make sure that you are stirring as you are adding the chicken broth for at least the first couple cups that you put in, and then you can dump the whole thing in, stirring constantly. You just want to make sure that it's not creating any clumps in the soup. So after that has come to a little bit of a simmer, we're going to add in a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, a teaspoon of coriander, and a teaspoon of garlic powder, and a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And I actually used a teaspoon of regular yellow mustard, and it gives it this just another level of depth. That was so good. So now we're going to add in 2 cups of milk. Of course, you're going to want to stir consistently. This way, nothing clumps. Once your potatoes are nice and soft and done cooking, just drain them and mash them up with another tablespoon of butter, a little salt and pepper. And I actually use about a ladle. I guess I'm not sure, maybe 1/2 cup I would, if I had to measure it, of the soup just to make the potatoes nice and creamy. You are going to love what we do with these potatoes. Once your soup comes up to a boil, you're going to add in about 1/2 cup of sour cream and just give that a really good stir. And now we're going to actually add those potatoes right into this soup. It is amazing because these potatoes just melt right into the soup, and it literally tastes like a shepherd's pie when you eat it, and it's just really, really good stuff. So give it a really good stir until all the potatoes are nice and melted. And then just bring it up to a low simmer and let it simmer for about 5 minutes. After 5 minutes are up, we're going to add back in our ground beef, and we're going to use, I used about 3/4 of a bag of mixed vegetables. You can really eyeball this. It really depends on how many veggies you like in it. You can really use the whole bag, but I just used 3/4 of mine, and I just cooked that all the way through, seasoned it because of course, taste your food as you go. So I put a little more salt and pepper, and then I actually added 2 cups of shredded cheddar cheese. And when I added this cheese, I made sure that the bottom of the pot was not too hot or it wouldn't melt nice and creamy. Here is what it came out like, and it was amazing. Literally like shepherd's pie in a bowl. The entire family loved it and warmed us up from the inside out. This sausage, potato, and kale soup is something I have been making since I learned how to cook like 15 years ago. So I am going to be chopping up 1 onion and mincing up 3 cloves of garlic. Over to our pot, I am just going to brown 1 pound of ground sausage, and I'm going to brown that about halfway, and then I'm just going to add the onions and going to cook that all the way through. And then after the meat and onions are tender, I'm going to add in our garlic, and then we're just going to cook the garlic for about a minute or until it is nice and fragrant, and then season it up with some salt and pepper, a teaspoon each of garlic powder and Italian seasoning. Give it a really good stir. Here is my secret weapon, which is just a can of diced potatoes, and then I am going to add in 6 cups of water along with 6 bouillon cubes. You can use regular broth if that's what you have on hand as well. And then here I have about 4 cups of chopped kale, and it looks like a lot, but it wilts down very quickly, and my kids absolutely adore this meal. I serve it with a side of bread, and it is so good. I topped it with some Parmesan cheese. If you've never tried it before, give this recipe a try. It has been a family favorite for years. For our final recipe, I'm making Italian sausage and spinach soup. I know that a lot of these recipes are similar, but there's so many variations, and I think that these ingredients are so good in pretty much all soups. So I'm just making our mirepoix, which is the onions, the carrots, the celery, and garlic. And of course, I am using a bell pepper here. Now I am just going to brown the ground Italian sausage halfway, and then we're going to add in all of our veggies except for the garlic that will come after. Cook this until the sausage is all the way cooked through. Now we are going to add in a teaspoon of oregano, teaspoon of garlic powder, give that a really good stir. And then we are going to add in our garlic and cook that until it is nice and fragrant. So another fun ingredient I like adding into a lot of my Italian soups is just a jar of marinara sauce. It gives it a really nice depth of flavor. So I put in 1 jar of marinara and 4 cups of chicken broth, along with 1 15-ounce can of Great Northern beans, aka cannellini beans. Gave that a really good stir, brought it up to a low simmer, and then I'm adding in 3 cups of fresh spinach. I love how the spinach wilts down. I don't let it wilt too much, because if you let it wilt too much, it gets a little brown. So I cook it maybe about 2 minutes. So this is what it came out like. It is another amazing meal, so delicious, all of those veggies, super hearty, and again, one of our family's favorites. So that's gonna do it for today's video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you find a soup that will warm you up from the inside out this chilly winter that we are having already. So have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.